Hello, I'm Tatsu Bedwoods, manager of the St. Maarten Nature Foundation and the man of war shoal marine protected area. Sharks have roamed our oceans since before the time of dinosaurs, but their long reign at the top of the ocean food chain is coming to an end. The onset of industrial fishing over the past 60 years has drastically depleted their populations and, unless we act now, they will be gone forever. Together with my colleagues from the Saba and Station Marine Parks, we bring you this report on how sharks are perceived on our three islands.
Most of my long lining I do on the Saba bank, around the edges, and within like an hour or two, usually they come around sometimes. Sometimes you don't even see them all day. And then there's certain areas where I go to fish, I guess they're tuned to the motor. As soon as I pull up, they'll start coming around to investigate when the food is going to start coming over. They'll come right up to the boat while we're pulling the long line on board. Sometimes when they're in the mood for feeding, they'll come right again to the boat and take the fish from the boat.
Well, catching conch, I really don't get bothered from them. Lobster, I don't get bothered from them, but if I see them when I'm lobstering, it tends to be somewhat curious of what's happening, especially when the lobster makes the sound that you catch them. They tend to be somewhat curious.
They come right up behind of the traps. I saw a nurse shark about 15 foot long coming right behind of my traps because it was full of fish, and I just tried to get the trap on the boat fast as possible. He's come up to the surface, and then after he went back.
I used to bring them in here, drag them. They got a place up there on a shallow, you call it New Bank. And I went there already, but the shark couldn't because you were tight to the boat. And I come home. When I come in home, I drag him till he get there on the shore. Then I help pull it up on the shore. They kill it, and then they cut it up and they go with it.
Yeah, when we go trawling, sometimes we do hook up on a shark, but that's not a regular thing. Only time we'll get sharks that bother us when we hook up on a wahoo or we got a tuna on, the shark will come and they'll get their free meal. But it doesn't happen every time, so it's not a threat to our business.
When I do get bothered from reef sharks is like when I'm basically spear fishing. On occasion I had them taking fish from my spear.
A shark is just doing its job, and his job is eat. So regardless, we can't stop it. It's just going to keep eating.
People that buy it, but it's not abundant of people that want it. A lot of people are straying away from it. It's not a food that someone likes.
There's no local market for sharks, so we don't bring them back home because we can't get them sold.
In the past, a lot of us fishermen, what we do, we get sharks and you'd bring them in, like especially the nurse shark, you would catch them in the traps. You'll bring them in and some people would come by, they would want them and you would give them to them. You won't sell them.
I don't go direct for shark. Just if they're bothering me too much, then I kill them to get rid of them. But I don't really kill them there to say, well, you're going to catch shark.
My family is a very old fishing family, and they never regarded shark meat as very good at all. My grandfather, as far as I can remember, my father, I've never heard of them going out to target shark, pretty much. Of course, there would be the occasional shark that would come into the Old Bay, and I'm talking about a long time ago, far before my time, when my father was a kid in Marigot Harbor, growing up there, and there'd be the occasional shark that would come in, very big sharks that they would catch. It had nothing to do with catching them for meat. It was a question of safety. They saw the shark coming in there, and yeah, sometimes they would dispatch them, because everyone spent their lives swimming in the bay in front of the buildings, and that's when the occasional one would be harvested. But to say that they targeted sharks specifically, no, never. Not to my knowledge at all, no.
I don't hunt sharks, and one of the things is hunt the shark is on station. It is not a payday, so.
No, we try to avoid getting conflict with shark. If I go fishing and I see the shark around, I won't even put in my line because I know he's going to cut away my gear before I even start. So why start something you're going to lose?
The shark does keep them healthy like us. We catch them, we eat them. And then the shark catch them, we eat them. So need that healthiness, I see the shark will do.
They keep everything in balance. It's like everything. Everything has its role. one will be the food for the next one.
They're out there in the ocean. We can't do nothing about them. They destroy our fish traps, our long lines. But by the end of the day, it's nature. We can't do nothing about it. We just gotta accept it. And it is what it is.
So it sounds like most fishermen would be quite happy not to interact with sharks. Scuba divers, on the other hand, go out of their way to see them.
Well, we actually log what type of sharks we see every day, and primarily it is Caribbean reef sharks. A lot of nurse sharks, of course. We used to think they were all black tips until we learned the difference. So black tips are less common to see. A couple times a year we see a hammerhead or a tiger shark, but it is predominantly those Caribbean reef sharks.
Mostly here on St-Eustatius, what we see are the nurse sharks, which get quite large, up to about 4 meters or 12 feet long. We see reef sharks, the gray reef shark, which is usually in the 2 meter, 6 foot range. And we might see reef sharks 2 or 3 or 4 at a time on a reef, and circling the area and staying with us for a long time. And if we're lucky, they'll come in within about 3 meters, 15 feet or so. And so you get a really nice look at a beautiful animal just swimming by you. It's really exciting.
Once a year we see the great hammerhead. That's only occasionally. That will make out, eh? But Caribbean reef sharks and nurse sharks are the sharks who are really common around here.
The main reason that divers are seeing so many sharks around our islands is largely due to local protection efforts. Saba was the first of the 3 islands to establish a marine park.
The Saba Marine Park has been ongoing since over 25 years with very humble beginnings, and now quite recognized throughout the region as an example for other marine parks. It expands all around the island to a depth of 60 meters. And it is divided in a number of zones. You have recreational zones where a variety of uses are allowed, including recreational fishing, but there are also no-take zones where no activity of extracting nature is allowed. We do also have an additional marine park, the Saba Bank, which is a much larger area, 2,400 square kilometers, but also a national marine park.
The Saba Bank is about 5 kilometers away from the Saba Marine Park and is the largest submerged atoll in the Atlantic and is one of the greatest marine reserves for sharks out there. Here in the marine park we have about Caribbean reef sharks and nurse sharks, but out there it's about the bull sharks and the tiger sharks. Actually, the mascot of the Saba Bank is the tiger shark.
The National Marine Park surrounds the entire island of Statia on a 30-meter depth contour. That's why it has such a strange shape. Within the park there are 2 reserves, the Northern Reserve and Southern Reserve. They are no-take areas. So you cannot anchor, you cannot fish from in those areas, but you can dive, and we have moorings that you can pull up to prevent damaging by dropping anchors. Fishing you can do in the general use area, so on the Caribbean side, the entire front of the island, and on the Atlantic side, the entire Atlantic side is, you can fish, but sometimes it's rough over there, so not many people fish on that side.
The marine park area is in the Proselyte area. That's the area outside of Point Blanche where the cruise facilities is. There's a marine park there called the Proselyte area. That's a protected area. It's been protected over 2 years ago, full protection. So there's a no kill policy in the marine park area. So no take, no fishing, no trolling. A few years back also, the legislation was passed where it was not allowed anymore for any fisherman or anyone to catch a shark and land it on St. Maarten. The policy for that was basically if you caught a shark or killed a shark, then you will be fined, you will be prosecuted.
The banning doesn't really matter to us because we never bring them in because there's no local market for them. So we just leave them out there.
Well, a couple of years ago they changed the rules about fishing for sharks, and now you're no longer allowed to specifically target sharks anywhere on the Dutch side. unfortunately, when you're fishing for tarpon, which I do a lot, especially in the summer months, you can't help but hook a shark, and in that case, we get him in, we take the hook out, and we let him go. And I fish the beaches a lot, so the Nature Foundation, I've always been in contact with them, and they chose to allow me to tag the sharks. I wouldn't say that I intentionally go after sharks right now, but I'll set my gear up with cable to make sure they don't cut me off, and when I do catch them, I tag them. I do it as quick as possible, and I get them back, and it's a pretty cool thing. It makes you feel good when you let one go, and you always in the back of your head hope, where's he going to be recaught, and you hope he doesn't get recaught by a commercial guy. You hope you're going to hear, oh, they caught your shark in Grenada. That's a really cool thing to me.
So here on St. Maarten, marine protection is still in its early days, but already we are seeing positive results from our efforts, similar to those on our sister islands. One clear beneficiary of these efforts is the dive industry.
What we have is a complete ecosystem. Without sharks, you don't have the apex predator. It's like going on safari in Africa and you don't see any lions. You're going to say, where are all the lions? And that's the whole point of this, is that shows that the Marine Reserve has created a complete ecosystem, and that when a visitor comes diving on St-Eustatius, they're going to see everything that's supposed to be here, from the littlest animals right up to the apex predator. And that's my main point about why sharks are so important to our dive tourism industry here on St-Eustatius. And besides that, the guests just love to see these beautiful, amazing animals swimming freely in the ocean.
The benefit of sharks is pretty endless when it comes to tourism. Every diver loves to see sharks. To really feel that you've seen this giant predator, to watch their movement, and sometimes to experience the behavior of, unfortunately, seeing what nature does out there, and how a fish stalks and attacks another fish is a pretty exciting thing as a diver.
We have healthy reefs, and part of the healthy reefs are sharks, and that's why the divers come here, to see a healthy marine environment.
If divers come back from a dive, first thing they write down in the logbook is that they saw a shark, and it's high on, I must say, high on the list of every diver, I think.
Sometimes people come specifically and hope to see sharks. There's nothing like it, swimming or diving with a shark. It's fantastic. It's happened to me, and it's like you're mesmerized seeing such a, I don't want to say ancient creature, but something that's been around for so long, a real top predator. It's so sleek and beautiful, and to be in the water with it, it's a very special event, and you find a lot of tourists specifically asked to be taken to sites where they will see a shark. So they're quite good for the economy as well.
The problem we are still having here is that although we think that we have a healthy shark population around Saba, we don't really know anything about them. We don't know if there are local populations, we don't know if there are regional populations, we don't know their behavior, we don't know how they reproduce. There's so many open questions about sharks that we have to deploy much more scientific studies, or we have to engage in much more research here in our waters to really understand what impacts on shark populations in general.
In an effort to start answering all these questions and collect baseline data, Dutch telemetry expert Erwin Winter came to Saba in October 2014 to start a year-long research project to monitor the movement of sharks around the island.
Well, we see that sharks are in decline throughout the Caribbean. And in order to protect sharks, you have to get insight in their behavior, because you need to know where they spend their time. And if it's on a very local, small area, then you're then putting a sanctuary or a no-take zone is much more effective than if they wander around and hop from island to island. And then you need other directed measures to protect such a population. So you need to know the underlying movement patterns and able to save or protect populations. Well, at first we deployed the detection stations, 8 in total, around the island. So the next step is to get sharks around with transmitters in them. We were able to get 6 Caribbean reef sharks in the first 2 days.
Not small neither.
Yeah, we bring them alongside the boat, then with a rope we secure their tail, and then we lift them from 2 sides on board. We flip them over, and the sharks, they have this unique feature that once you flip them over and they're lying on their back with belly up, they get into a certain trance state. That's called tonic immobility, and that allows us to work with these animals. And I make a small incision in the body cavity of a few centimeters, and we put the transmitter in the body cavity, stitch them up with a few stitches, and then we measure the shark total length, and it's been set free again to collect data for us. The transmitters that we implant in the sharks, they last for about 4.5 years. So that gives us the opportunity to follow individuals for a long period of time. My guess would be that chances of finding local movements and that they really stick to the island are relatively large.
This research project is scheduled to run for a whole year, but initial readings from the receivers seem to indicate that Erwin's theory is correct and that the tag sharks are staying around Saba. Another area that will benefit from further research is the Saba Bank Marine Park.
Absolutely, we need more data on the sharks on the Saba Bank. There's a lot going on for the Saba Marine Park right now, but it would be great if we can have more science projects for the Saba Bank specifically.
Well, until recently, very little was known about the sharks on the Saba Bank. So actually the aim of our study is to get actually a baseline study for the situation on the bank. Now, in order to come up with a proper baseline, we want to be able to compare it with other areas to see if we're better off or worse off than other areas in the Caribbean. So we try to use a technique that is widely used in shark research in the world, and it's called stereo-baited remote underwater video. It's actually quite a simple technique where we put a camera on the bottom and with some bait to attract the sharks. We leave the cameras there for an hour, and all the sharks that come by can easily be identified and measured. The results of this survey will form sort of the basic for future management. In one way, the basic survey will provide us a reference point for the future. So, for example, if management measures are being implemented, we can actually evaluate whether they're actually helping and improving the situation. Secondly, this basic data on the distribution of sharks would, for example, enable us, if we're planning on establishing marine parks or sanctuaries, to actually establish where the hotspots of the sharks are on the bank and the surrounding waters.
Even though on our 3 islands research and protective actions are already taking place, sharks are still in trouble.
Here in the region, I think the biggest pressure are the foreign fishing fleets who come here with big factory ships and take anything out or everything out of the water, including sharks, of course, and some fleets do actually even target sharks. There is a big market still, even here in the region, for fins, shark fins.
Well, for the most part, the only threat to a shark is man. So it's just different aspects of what man does, whether it's coastal development that's damaging reefs or specifically targeting them for finning.
You know, all around the world right now, people are talking about the importance of sharks. And in the Pacific, they have a big problem with shark finning, where people are killing sharks just for their fins. And this is a terrible shame. It's actually a crime against nature.
There is a big need to protect sharks in the Caribbean because we see ecosystems, marine ecosystems failing throughout. The reefs is under stress, and when we take out one of the top predators, the chain reaction starts. So we start on the top and end on the bottom. Either way you take it, since we are that stressed already, or our ecosystems are that stressed already, taking out one of the most important links will have or has catastrophic consequences.
There is talk of making a enormous shark sanctuary for the 3 islands, such as St. Maarten already has a shark sanctuary, so they want to incorporate our island and Saba into that, so it will be really like the entire EEZ. So I think it's a wonderful idea.
There has been a lot of cooperation between the Northern Caribbean islands, specifically, of course, our sister islands, St-Eustatius, St. Maarten, but also St. Bart's, the French islands. And I think that's very important. We can't see ourselves as isolated. We have to see this as a region. So protection efforts have to be cross-boundary, not just localized here.
So I believe that conservation is highly important. If we want our future generations to have anything, we have to start now. There's a few key species, and sharks are right on the top of that list. They keep our oceans clean, they keep fish populations healthy. Without them, we're done. We've got nothing. We've got no ocean.
Sharks have ruled the ocean for millions and millions of years, keeping the sea in balance by sitting on top of the ocean food chain. Over the past decades, through our own irresponsible stewardship of the ocean, we are now faced with the disappearance of these majestic creatures, and with them, the very health of our oceans. This will not only affect these beautiful yet misunderstood creatures, but will, in fact, affect the very survival of coastal communities. Coastal communities on which millions depend for fisheries and tourism. Especially here in the Dutch Caribbean, where we depend so much on the sea, it is as much for us, as islanders, to protect sharks. For if they disappear, invariably, so will we.